It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
So, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, she's announced that on February 15th, she's going to announce she's running for president. You can't make this up. So, the pie fight about to begin, as Trump has already begun attacking DeSantis, should be interesting on the Republican side to see the sideshow. Is this going to help us move the country forward in any way? I don't think so. And again, I come back to this idea. There are problems we can solve, but we're not allowed. Because again, it's the fight. The fight is more important than the solutions. It's more lucrative, certainly, than the solutions. And here to share some thoughts on, well, is there hope? Is there a way forward in the environment that we're in? Or, do we need a catastrophe to bring us back together? I've asked my good friend, former Alabama Senator Doug Jones, to come share some thoughts. Doug, thanks for taking time for us.
As always, Rick, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight.
So, let's start with Nikki Haley. Thoughts on, she said she was not going to run if Trump was going to run. Evidently she is. Any thoughts there?
Well, look, clearly, I think a lot of Republican presidential wannabes see Donald Trump as a wounded animal right now. I think they underestimate him. I think there's still a hardcore base out there. But I think the term pie fight, Rick, is probably being a little bit too gracious with what we're going to see there. I mean, you've already seen Trump attacking DeSantis. He may not do that with Nikki Haley for a little bit because I don't think he'll see her as big a threat. But the fun's going to start, I think, pretty soon with that. And she's got an interesting record. I was reading some things early, and one comment that was made that I kind of think is going to resonate with voters a little bit is that she started out as a really principled politician doing the right thing for the state of South Carolina. And then all of a sudden she became just solely embedded with the Trump organization, so to speak. And here we are. And she's now going to try to outmaneuver DeSantis to be the next Donald Trump. She's not going to, I think, espouse the Republican line that I grew up with. They'll give lip service to the old Republican establishment, but this is going to be a culture war type Republican primary season. Trump's already set the stage. DeSantis has set the stage, and in order to compete, she's going to have to engage in those same kind of crazy culture wars that I think ultimately will defeat the Republican candidate, whoever it might be, in 2024.
Well, I mean, that's the hope. I mean, the hope is that we're not the country that we appear to be on the surface at this moment. But the fear is and again, I started off with this, the idea that during the Trump era, it's not what we learned about Trump; it's what we learned about ourselves that I think is most frightening, or at least our friends and neighbors.
Sure. I mean, this primary is going to be about division. This is going to be about whipping up a base. You're not going to hear except through lip service. I mean, look, Rick. Every candidate will talk about unity. Every candidate will talk about unifying the country, those kind of things. But when you strip away those sound bites and look at what they're really doing, you're going to see, again, culture wars that are nothing but division. I think coming out of every Republican presidential nominee, save potentially somebody like an Asa Hutchinson or a Larry Hogan. I think they move to the middle and they truly try to represent more than just a really radical right base.
No, but here's the problem that I have. There's so much special interest in division. There's so much so much money and an investment in the fight that the solution, if we gave on every point, if we did everything that the outrage machine wants, it would never be enough. And they would still create other divisions to keep us ripped apart. And this is where my fear is, because I look at guns. I talked about the gun issue today. I got an email from Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA, who said that they're coming to confiscate your guns. Nobody's coming to confiscate your guns.
No,
nobody.
It's absurd. We've heard it for 40 years. Obama was going to do it. He didn't do it. Biden was going to do it. He's not doing it. Nobody's going to come confiscate guns. It's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. What appears to be I used to say an organization that had some, at least some backbone to it. Apparently they've had their own internal issues with how they've managed the NRA in the last few years and how they've managed all these people's money. But things like that, you're right. There's big money in some of the special interest groups. And let's be honest, there's big money in media too. I mean, the media stokes these fears too, and it's all about clickbait and it's all about money. And we know that fear and division drives voters oftentimes. And so it's going to be difficult. You're going to have some folks just stand up and be damned and maybe lose a couple of elections but really try to talk to people and get down and get through that. That's the only way you can get through, but it's going to be, you're absolutely right that it's going to be really, really difficult with the money that folks like the NRA have, others have, and the media on both the right and the left who really play onto the fears.
Yeah, but my problem is there doesn't seem to be any left media. I mean, I keep hearing about this mythical left media, and I'm going, where is it? Did I miss this?
Well, look, there are messengers still out there. There's still messengers that are still out there. But there's no question that the media from the right, the Fox News, the Tucker Carlsons, those folks, those are the ones that really stoke that. Those are the ones making a lot of money off of these divisions. And that filters down to candidates like Donald Trump and others. I think that DeSantis is stoking those fears. I think Youngkin was elected stoking those fears in Virginia. And, we'll see if the Republican Party wants to move beyond that and actually try to do some things and work together and make some moves with these media folks and see what can happen. I want to try to, have some hope and optimism here because the alternative is really very difficult to do, but it's not easy. There's an interesting book that if you haven't seen it, by Chris Stirewalt called Broken News. I'll give Chris a plug. He's a great guy. He was the Fox News political analyst that called the race for Joe Biden in Arizona and got fired for doing it. And he's written this book called Broken News, and it talks about exactly what you're saying, how it's money driven by the media to kind of divide this country. He offers some pretty good insights, and part of it is insights for people that, we've got to push back on that and we've got to get into other silos.
Yeah, and look, and I think we've got to reclaim the word news. I mean, I look at Fox. Fox is not news. I've had people go, "Well, you're news. I'm not news. This is an opinion program. This is
right.
This is me having a conversation and wanting to find out what is news. But I'm not telling you what news is. And I think we've screwed that word up so badly that there's so many new quote unquote news sources that none of them are accurate, but they feed into our confirmation bias.
No, look, I think that's part of Chris's book. It is just simply that. We have moved from the days of Walter Cronkite and David Brinkley and Chet Huntley and those folks, where you had the news organizations were giving you the same set of facts that was news, and then people would make their opinions from those same set of facts. We don't have the same set of facts anymore coming from cable news and all of these crazy streaming services and some radio shows, Rick, not yours, but others that they just want to make stuff up. So you're right. It's not news anymore. It's entertainment. And it's entertainment for people, and it plays on the fears, and it makes them money.
Yeah, my North Star is always, how do you make working people's lives better? I tell the story all the time. I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. I think about that kid growing up in that place where I grew up and what chance that kid's got to get out of those projects and lead a good life, and what policies we can use to move that forward. That's always been my North Star. It's getting stuff done. But sadly, there's too much that's put in our way to not get things done. For instance, I look at this Commonwealth Fund report that just came out. I'm sure you probably saw this, that points out that, we in this country spend almost twice as much as every other country in the OECD, OEDC world on healthcare, yet we get worse outcomes, have higher suicide rates, higher deaths from preventable diseases, higher infant mortality, higher maternal mortality, all of the negatives, not even, and no universal coverage. And yet we can't seem to solve very simple problems like this. We should have every child with health care. Every adult should be covered. No one should die of a preventable disease in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization. That should be the minimum.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Getting there at this point, given what's going on, not just for the last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, but for decades now in our healthcare system, and the technology that's been advanced, and the number of things that we see coming up, the pharmaceutical industry, all of that, it's such a major problem that we've got right now. It is going to take an awful lot to try to fix that and get to it. You cannot wave a magic wand anymore and try to get that done. One would think that we can do it, but it goes back in a lot of ways to political power. Everybody, I guarantee you, Rick, everybody that you talk to on the Hill, if you just took your speech just then and asked them, are you in favor of this? I don't think anybody would say, no, I'm not in favor of improving that. I'm not in favor of improving health outcomes. I'm not in favor of improving, getting more cost-efficient health care. And even universal health care, if you define universal, meaning everyone has an opportunity for good quality health care. I think everybody would agree with it. Getting there is really difficult, though, because of the infrastructure that's already in place and breaking through with that. We couldn't even get in Alabama, and I think it's now down to about 13 or 14 other states, to expand Medicaid when they had 3 years of an opportunity where they wouldn't have to pay one damn dime back, not one dime back to the federal government. 3 years, just billions of dollars that was going to come in to my state over a 10-year or 12-year period. They wouldn't do it because the Affordable Care Act got nicknamed after a former president. And it was a purely political decision. They hid behind the money that ultimately they couldn't get the money. And it was just a fallacy. So everything comes down to right now the political power. I think what we saw playing out in the House of Representatives vote for a speaker, the 15 votes for a speaker, is kind of a microcosm of what we see so much. And that is people will do or say just about anything in order to get their power, to keep their power, to get that gavel. And that is a problem that is going to take a lot of political courage for folks to stand up and break and get with folks on both sides of the aisle and do the things that you're talking about to, quote, get things done. Because you're right, that's what the American people want, polling after poll after poll, focus group after focus group. That's what it's all about.
No, it's absolutely. But the sad reality is we can't fix simple things. I mean, look at this debt ceiling fight, and I'm sure you're probably as frustrated as I am with this. I view the people who are in charge of the House right now as people who literally want to shoot the hostage. I mean, we've created another hostage situation with this debt ceiling, and I believe there are people right now who would be okay with sending us into default if it meant that they didn't get their pound of flesh. And I fear what that means for working people, not just in this country, but across the globe, because we've got people who want the center stage.
No, there's no question. And the sad thing is, most of those people really don't know what the consequences would be,
or care
to the United States, or they might care if they really knew. I don't think that they really bother to look and see, and they start confusing the debt limit and a default with a government shutdown because we can't get a budget. Two completely different things. They don't consider the fact that the debt limit issue and raising the debt limit is for all of those bills that have been stacking up over time, including all of the bills that stacked up during the Trump administration, which these same people generally voted to raise the debt limit every time it was asked because we had to. And the consequences are dire. Look, I was a little bit encouraged today when I heard both coming out of the White House and Speaker McCarthy say that they had a frank discussion and they want to have more. At least it wasn't a. I was expecting the worst from that meeting today, and we didn't see that. We've got until June, so hopefully something will be worked out and cooler heads can prevail, and we can, because at the end of the day, the debt ceiling has got to be raised one way or another. We've got to get it done. Everyone knows that, and I think it'll happen. I'm just going to be. There will be people voting against it, though.
Sure, there will be. Absolutely.
There are always the people that will vote on it as a matter of principle. Their vote will not count, and they know it. It's a safe vote for them, and they can demagogue it. And I think our job, part of the job, is going forward, is to remind people that they did not vote to do that, and what the consequences would be. We've got to turn those tables on them somehow and not let them get away with making a political statement on something as important as because you hit something that I also don't think people fully appreciate. And it's not just our 401ks. It's not just your defined benefit plans and retirement. This would be a worldwide problem if the United States of America defaulted on its debt obligations. A worldwide problem at a time when the economies of this world and the economy of this country is slowly getting back. Inflation is slowly getting under control. People are working. Things are going on. But we still have a war in Ukraine. We still have the possibility of an economic collapse if we don't stay this kind of course. It would be a serious matter that I just don't think folks fully appreciate it. And they want to play politics with it, and that I'm as frustrated with that as you are.
And it's not just playing politics, Doug. It's the fact that they seem to want to use it as an opportunity to tick some things off of their wet dream list. Going after Social Security and Medicare. Why in the name of why would you choose that the first club out of the bag? And for me, it's really telling that the first club out of the bag is we've got to go after these quote unquote entitlement programs. No, Social Security and Medicare are not entitlement programs. We paid for those. We earned those. It's not a deserved thing. We earned those. We paid for them. They're ours. Stop trying to destroy them. And this is my problem with this whole setup. Working people constantly are taking it on the chin at every frame, whether it's the Fed raising interest rates, seeming to want to move us towards a recession, or Republicans trying to take away what little safety net we've got left.
Well, I agree with you, except I'll defend the Fed a little bit. I think that the Fed had to take some aggressive action because those interest rates are the one thing that they could do to cool the economy a little bit. It was pumping out fast and furious, and with interest rates rising, the inflation rate has started to subside. It's why you saw the Fed today just raise by 1/4 of a point rather than 1/2 or 3/4 of a point. That is a good sign. That is a really good sign. However, on the other hand, it's all the other factors that we've still got to deal with. And you're absolutely right. Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all of that is being paid for. Every paycheck, we pay for it. And I think that got such blowback throughout remember, it was an issue in the 2022 midterms where Rick Scott and others were talking about people having skin in the game, talking about privatizing, talking about reauthorizing it, every year. Hell, if you can't raise the debt limit, how are you going to reauthorize Social Security, Medicare, which is so contentious among some people? So it was raised then. I think people soundly rejected that. Donald Trump even has said, leave it alone with regard to the debt ceiling. That doesn't mean he's saying leave it off, take it off the table. He's just saying don't make it a part of the debt ceiling. I think McCarthy has said that too, but there are still people out there. And that's driven by, the folks, I think, on Wall Street and other places that would make money on privatizing Social Security and other programs like that. So
No, look, I mean, for all of the horrible that people are saddled with in this moment, I think we're moving in a direction that is positive. I think we're investing in infrastructure, reshoring some manufacturing. I saw the president this week was in New York and saying, look, we're going to build the tunnel that the New York, New Jersey area has desperately needed for many years. There's massive investments going. This is a step in the right direction. And again, I come back to, I had someone remind me that after World War II, we had a big bit of inflation as well because of demand and people getting back into the economy, except we handled it differently. We handled it by massive investments. We handled it with stronger unions fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, instead of what we seem to be going through right now.
Yeah, look, one thing you mentioned, the unions, and one fact I heard last week when I was in D.C. and then again this week, and I did not know it, but we're seeing an uptick in union membership. And Alabama, okay, Rick, Alabama led the country in an increase in union membership last year. And I just, we were a strong union state, and it really helped the state a lot. And I think, hopefully things are turning around on that a little bit. I do think that when people are concerned about the debt, they hear about the debt. And that's one of those issues, Rick, that I think Republicans especially can demagogue to death about the debt and how we're leveraging and mortgaging our grandchildren. And there's some validity to some of the things they're saying, but it overlooks a couple of things. It overlooks, number one, Donald Trump and his tax cuts for the richest corporations and the richest people in the country contributed to that debt significantly. I mean, in a big, big way. The second thing that contributed to it was COVID. I was in the Senate when we had to pass a $2 trillion emergency relief plan, the largest in the history of this country. And it passed almost unanimously in the Senate and in the House because we were trying our best to save lives and save businesses and save jobs. And we did the best we could. It was not a perfect bill by any stretch. And the third thing that I think people forget and maybe don't even know is that the last budget in this last year, this administration, the Biden administration, lowered that debt by over $1 trillion. The work that this administration has done has been to try to start whittling away at our national debt. And it will continue to do that, but you've got to do it in a responsible way. You can't do anything if you're not going to pay your bills.
No, and look, I say this all the time. The time to fight over spending is before you spend the money. It's not like I get to go to the restaurant, I get to eat, and I get to go, you know what, I decided, no, I'm not going to pay for it. Dining and dashing is not something we should be doing yet. We've got some in the Senate who, like I've said, they want to shoot the hostage or they want to shoot the chef. They want to dine and dash.
Yeah, it's. I think it's primarily over in the House. There are going to be those in the Senate for sure, but I think that the House is going to be the real key there. We've got a number of factors in the Senate that I think are working in our favor, but look, let's see how this plays out a little bit. Everybody wants to. It's really easy to play chicken right now when you're still 5 months away from this issue. What I hope people will understand, though, is if they want to play chicken for a little bit, do it for just a little bit, because as we get closer to the debt ceiling deadline and we get closer to Armageddon on that issue, then the markets and the economy is going to start. We're going to feel it. They're going to, in anticipation of that. Markets don't just react overnight. Sometimes they start getting jittery and things start happening. People are going to be moving their stocks into cash. There's going to be a lot of things going on. So they need to come up with something to where they can go ahead and do this now, get this over with, get it down the road so we can move on. And then if you want to talk about spending, it's a legitimate issue in the United States Congress to talk about spending taxpayer dollars. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Last line of questioning I wanted to get into, classified documents. You've talked about this extensively. They searched President Biden's, I guess, his beach house now. They didn't find anything. They searched his house. They didn't find anything. It seems like classified documents are turning up all over the place. Is there a way forward on this? I mean, and does this exonerate Trump from any of his problems with the pretty folders that he collected because they had nice words on them?
I think all of these are going to stand on their own. And, Rick, if people that have followed me when all of the stuff with Mar-a-Lago hit, I have always been consistent about this, that all of this is about the documents. It's not about prosecuting. It's not about investigations. It is really about getting the documents back. That's why the DOJ and Archive spent a lot of effort giving Donald Trump every benefit of the doubt to return everything. But there was someone in that Trump world that kept telling them, you need to come back because you ain't got them all. There's still stuff there. And lo and behold, there was stuff there. And I know there's a lot of people that have been talking about how you distinguish that with what happened with President Biden and now Vice President Pence. Documents got in their possession. They ended up in places that they shouldn't have been. But the president's lawyers, when they find out, they make a decision. They're going to completely cooperate. They're going to work with them. They're going to go through. They're going to allow DOJ to search the premises just so that they'll take any thing away from any criticism that maybe they're hiding something or doing something. Vice President Pence likewise is embarrassed that he had documents in his possession. There's a couple of problems here with this.
And it's something we're certainly going to have to deal with. We'll see where this takes us.
Including, Rick, real quick, including the fact that we need to not classify so damn many of them. I can tell you from firsthand, it's way overclassified.
Good stuff. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate the time.
All right, buddy. Take care.
This is Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys, and you're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At The Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right-left or red-blue, when they are and always have been up-down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.